You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I'm your host, Carl Dumler, and with me as always I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, how goes it out there in Iowa?
Hey, doing pretty well. It looks like it's going to be a wet week, wet Memorial Day weekend, and we've had some pretty serious storms coming through, but hey, that's the early summer in this part of the region. I know that you're flooding down there yourself.
Yeah, I can't believe how much rain we've been getting here lately. It's just crazy. It feels like we've been in a hurricane for like 3 days straight, but hey, I'm still here and excited to be able to talk some Bronco football once again. And so we want to make sure that you can find us on Twitter if you want to talk football with us. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH, and you can find Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. You can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure to subscribe to our show and leave us a rating as we value your input on our show. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. You can also head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of the 24/7 Sports and the CBS Sports Digital, to find ours on our co-writers' articles and all things pertaining to your Denver Broncos. Also, if you enjoy our show, make sure you head on over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating where Building the Broncos, along with Huddle Up, are found under the Huddle Up podcast. This podcast is powered by Overtime Media. Well, as exciting as the 2019 class is, and we've been talking about it, and we're going to continue to talk about it throughout the offseason, really when it comes to team building, you're looking at the class before this one to be the class that really makes the difference. And so really how the 2018 class does this year will really make or break this season for the Broncos. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and hey, let's do a quick recap of the 2017 class. All right, moving on. I guess Brendan Langley switched over. Carlos Henderson, I think he's in Washington. Did Marcus Walker? I don't think he's going to be on this team this year. And Garrett Bowles. So, okay. That's the podcast today, folks. Yeah.
Well, that would have been last year's podcast pretty much.
Yeah, I think
you have Jake Butt that can maybe make an impact this year.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And
Chad Kelly is now Andrew Luck's backup. Is that right?
I think he's his backup's backup. They have Jacoby Brissett there, too.
That's true.
Who's definitely better than Chad Kelly, the affluenza quarterback. So, my eyes are rolling so hard right now.
I know. But this class really comes down to how Garrett Bowles does there at left tackle. If Brendan Langley can produce anything as a wide receiver, and, of course, Jake Butt now being that third or fourth tight end, we'll see what he can do. I mean, anything he produces at this point is just bonus points.
Same with Brendan Langley.
Yeah, it's true. That is very, very true. So not a great class, which, again, is why this team has had some problems over the last couple of years. You look at the class before that, and there's a few more contributors out of that group. Actually, that was actually a pretty good class other than Paxton Lynch. Dang it.
Yeah, that's honestly, we should do a podcast sometime of where it went wrong.
Yeah.
And that class and Paxton Lynch would probably be it.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you have 2 bad years in a row kind of thing, especially if you miss on that quarterback in the first round and hope that he's going to be something and turns into nothing. Obviously, we're 2 losing seasons in a row. And so for the Broncos to recover, this 2018 class has to really rise up. And now they have a really good chance. There's actually some pretty good players. A lot of them had starting experience last year. I think Bradley Chubb, Courtland Sutton, Royce Freeman, Isaac Yiadom, Josey, Jewell, DaeSean Hamilton all had starts last year. So that's a pretty good start to the draft when you're considering how many rookies got onto the field.
Yeah. The counterpoint, though, maybe, the roster wasn't that great.
Well, that does affect it a little bit. That is true because Courtland Sutton wasn't a starter at the beginning of the season. Josey Jewell wasn't a starter. Yiadom wasn't a starter. Hamilton wasn't a starter. And most of them got their starting role because of trades or because of injuries.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that does play into it. But, again, that just shows the depth you need on an NFL roster. when that many starters are going down and these are your backups, and why not only this class, but even our rookie class is going to have to perform. We've already talked about them a little bit and what to expect. But again, this class has some players that they can really build around. And it all starts here with Bradley Chubb. And I saw you post something on Twitter about this, of him pretty much having one of the most quiet 12-sack seasons for a rookie ever.
Yeah, I mean, what are the stats that I posted? Something ridiculous. He had a great, I mean, statistically speaking, obviously stats aren't the complete picture, but 12 sacks, 14 tackles for loss, 21 quarterback hits, and two forced fumbles. And that doesn't get him a grade of over 80. I mean, that is, again, statistical comparison isn't always the best. The tape matters more, but that's better than Khalil Mack's rookie year by a good chunk. And I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Pro Football Focus was, losing their ever-loving crap over Khalil Mack. So
they have every year.
Yeah, hey, he doesn't get the stats, but look how impactful he is. He's the only one there. Well, maybe he's racking up the stats because he's the only one freaking there. Mm-hmm. There's something to be said about pass rush synergy, but you know what? You have more opportunity then as well. So, yeah, I don't get it. Again, it comes back to I think Pro Football Focus has its place, but it's not the 10 Commandments, so to speak. And I think sometimes carrying from college to the NFL, they have a little bit of what I call a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, hey, we rated Josey Jewell really high in coverage and overall in college, so we're going to rate him really high in the NFL. Hey, we didn't really love Bradley Chubb in college. We didn't grade him that high, so we're going to continue to do that to justify our prior grades. Maybe I'm not a tinfoil hat wearer, but I mean, it feels like I do see that a little bit time and time again with them, but we'll see.
Right. Well, you have to take all that stuff with a grain of salt. They even commented, I think some Chiefs person commented about how Darren Lee was top 5 in coverage. And one of the top people, Sam Monson there at PFF, he said that was mostly 2 games that gave him that score.
Sample size. Hey,
right.
That's
and he's just like, yeah, he's actually not that good. He just had 2 really good games, but yet he graded out as a top 5 coverage guy.
Yeah.
And so again, even their own people are saying, don't read into this too much. These are something to kind of guide you a little bit, but you take these as everything, you're going to not look all that smart.
Yep. You're right there.
But, and like you said, Bradley Chubb, if you would have told me before last season, Bradley Chubb is going to have a 12-sack season, 14 tackles for loss, 21 quarterback hits, 2 forced fumbles, I would have been sitting there saying that is an incredible rookie season. And if he's not rookie of the year, I will be shocked.
Yeah, probably I would say is the second best defender coming out of the class last year. I know Darius Leonard racked up a lot of stats, but I'm not here for the mediocre coverage funnel tackle production linebacker. He's great, don't get me wrong, but I think I'd take the pass rusher over him for sure, and then my boy Derwin James. So
who would have guessed that?
Anybody with eyes probably should have guessed it, right. Unless you're have some vendetta against him or something. You're biased, but what an absolute freak! Calling him a safety doesn't do him justice. There's nobody else like him in the league right now.
Right. I saw on Twitter somebody said you should just call his position Derwin James.
Yeah, I think that was Brett Collerman.
It could have been. I'm not sure, but I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense because he is everywhere. Yeah, he's on the defensive line, some linebacker, safety, corner. If it's a position on defense, he plays it.
Yeah, he's something else. But back to Bradley Chubb, who is the edge rusher, so we'll call him more valuable for now. The 12-sack season, really good. What did you think about his first year? Obviously he outdid my expectations. I'll be honest. But what do you think? Going into it, what did you see last year?
I was very impressed by the guy. I thought he showed why he was the top pass rusher in the draft. I thought he showed that he was one of the most NFL-ready players coming into that draft last year, and he showed very good technical skills. He had a few times, especially against the run, where he tried to guess, got himself trapped on the inside, gave up the edge, and let up some big plays. But he seemed to learn as the season went on to not do that quite as many times. But no, I was very, very impressed with what he could do. I thought he was bending around the edge better than I thought he would. And for considering the Broncos were not a good team and were losing most games, for him to get 12 sacks in a season is really pretty impressive. And especially when you consider how bad the secondary was as well. And teams just, I mean, you look at that first Raiders game, I know we won, but what'd they do? They just passed everything within a second. I mean, ball hits quarterback's hands, it's out of there. So there's no way to get to the quarterback. And there's a lot of teams that started doing that against the Broncos because the Broncos really had terrible scheme, not great fit of players sometimes. It was just not a good look. But yet here's this guy producing at this kind of level. So I'm excited year two, what he can do with the better secondary, hopefully a better offense. You just wrote an article on why the Broncos could have a top 15 offense this year that could give him more pass rush opportunities. And I think the sky's the limit with this guy. I think he is showing he can be one of those defenders you actually build your defense around because, I mean, as much as I love Von Miller, probably, 3 more years of very, very good production?
Probably. Right around when it's time to pay Chubb.
Right, exactly. And so you're kind of looking at this guy as that next Von Miller to build around. Now, he's not Von Miller.
No.
Don't get me wrong there. But he's in that next tier, I would say, of pass rushers. Or he's at least building up to being that kind of guy. Yeah,
Von Miller's on his way with his pace to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So pumping the brakes there on that one. But, I mean, using him, he's a different type of pass rusher than Von Miller as well. You know, Von, while he does have power, he doesn't possess the twitch or the bend that Von has. But I think he's got a little bit more, I mean, he has more mass and he can play with that. You know, he's more of that Khalil Mack type where he can just square you up, stay balanced, crazy strength in his punch, and can rip you off or push right through you to get to the quarterback. So I'm really excited to see what year two brings for him. Last year, I mean, he was a little bit hit or miss sometimes. That can happen with rookie pass rush. I mean, any pass rusher, to be honest.
Right. I was going to say Vaughn back in 2011, he had some moments that you just saw him guess wrong.
Yeah.
Rookies just try to make too much of an impact sometimes and don't just do their job.
Yeah.
And he got caught inside and plays went outside and easy touchdown. So it's not like Vaughn has been Vaughn his entire career. He's had his moments of weakness as well. But for a first year, you really can't ask for much more than what Bradley Chubb brought to the Broncos.
The only thing I will say about him that I'm looking forward this year, and granted the draft process and everything, you know, you're training for the combine. That's not training for football. So it's a little bit different. You're not as actually prepared as, you know, a second-year player will be. Obviously, the first 1 year of experience, but his body wasn't trained for football as much as it was this athletic pageant, which is, you know, that's a whole different argument to be had. But he also, I think, fell off last year, and that's a big thing that you see with those rookies because they hit that rookie wall playing so much more football. So that's something I'm looking for this year as well, as if he can sustain that excellence. And like I said, he definitely outperformed my expectations last year. I thought that he had a chance to be a really good beta pass rusher if you complement him with an alpha. And now looking at him, I mean, after that first year, I didn't fully expect that strength and that hand technique, the ability to drive guys to translate as much. You know, I was much more of the thought of, you know, speed, twitch, and bend is the translation for pass rushers. And honestly, that's changed a little bit. You got a little bit more power and stuff and length and, you know, size that matters to him. So I'm really excited about year two. I'm excited to see what he does in this Fangio defense. And I will say, you know, people are going to be sometimes dismayed with Fangio's scheme because he is going to ask those edge rushers to drop back, and, you know, he'll bring the inside linebackers up the A gap just to kind of disguise pressure. But
right.
I was pretty impressed with Bradley Chubb in space last year. You know, a lot of people had him squared as a purely 4-3 kind of edge rusher. You know, you don't want him playing as much in the 2-point stance, which Eric has made the point that Chubb is much better in the 2-point stance. I think we'll probably see an article at some point this summer about the difference between the 2-point and 3-point stance. So I don't know about that. I haven't charted that. But still, I think that transition to the 3-4 and the ability to run from the 2-point stance and play coverage is something that so much better than I thought it was going to be. You know, the athletic testing was solid at the combine. His 3-cone was not great, but really just a really, really good year one, and probably one of the more slept on great rookie seasons that I can remember in a while. And that tends to happen when your team isn't very good and you're not getting national coverage.
Right. And it was masked by having Derwin James just take the NFL by storm as a rookie and everybody being enamored by him.
He didn't even win rookie of the year.
I know. I'm with you, though, on the Darius Leonard, that it was a little overhyped.
I mean, he's really good.
Yeah.
He's really good, but I just don't value his skill set as much, if that makes sense. So, yeah, that's the big thing. But Chubb, so we talked about what he did. What about expectations for this year?
Well, and this is coming from, I think the offense is going to be a little better, so there's going to be times they're playing with more of a lead. This is thinking better scheme, better secondary. And so I'm actually thinking, because of Von Miller on the other side, he's going to have a 14.5 sack season. I think that's a very realistic number. Like you said, he's training more to be ready for NFL caliber seasons of 16 games. You talked about it there at the end of the year. In the last 6 games, he only had 3 sacks. And he had 4 games where he had 0 sacks in that last 6 games. And so I think with better conditioning, I think with more leads, I just see this guy really taking off in that direction. I think he's going to also increase his tackles for loss. I think he'll be up there and around that 20 mark, because I think he's going to be better against the run. Like I said, last year he just had too many times of guessing. Teams would bait him to jump inside to make a big play and beat him to the outside. I don't think that he's going to have quite those problems this year. And then I see him getting that. I think he's going to get 1 interception, because like you said, I do think they're going to be dropping back into coverage a little bit more just to disguise things. I do love hearing the team talk about how many times their secondary right before the snap switch positions to really confuse an offense, and just really trying to out-scheme an offense. We haven't had that for a while, since Wade Phillips, that playoff run in 2015. That was some of the best scheming I've ever seen. And now we got Vic Fangio, one of the better schemers in the entire league. And so, yeah, I think he's going to put this guy, Bradley Chubb, in a position to be successful. And I think he's going to have one of those years that has people going, man, okay, this guy's in that top 10 pass rushers in the league right now. What about you?
I think he's got a chance to be pretty darn special. And, right now, Ryan Kerrigan's kind of a guy that I look like he's that type, playing that 3-4. And I think he might have a drop in sacks this upcoming season. I mean, 12 sacks is pretty good output. He could sit around 12, but if he gets to double digits again, I mean, racking up those double-digit sack years is really, that's the cutoff for an elite edge rusher. So I could see him maybe going down 10, but I could see him being as high as 16. So I'll go with 12 again, but I think he's going to be much more efficient. I'm going to see more QB hurries this year. I'm going to see more QB hits and tackles for loss, and really just start to be a more impactful player, that teams have to account for, not just Von Miller, but that guy on the opposite side, Bradley Chubb. And quite honestly, I think he's going to, by the end of the season, I think we're going to be talking about him as the second best player on the Denver Broncos. He might be right now.
Well, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, Chris Harris is about the only guy that has an argument, I would say, ahead of him, really. Wouldn't
Phillip
you say?
Lindsay?
Yeah, but
he's running back. I know he's running back, but like if you were rating him on Madden, I could see Lindsay being rated higher.
Yeah, I guess so. With that speed, it's hard to argue with that.
And just like obvious production. Right. When a running back is making a difference in a game, it's much easier to tell than when an edge rusher is. It's the edge rusher just needs that one euphoric moment, and the game can change, where the running back is just more consistent statistical output.
Right.
So more valuable, that's different. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I'm really excited to see him this year. I'd love to see him, string together some more moves if that's possible, be a little bit better in his run discipline, and just be more effective. I'd love to see more stunts, more twists and stunts with him because of that power he does have. I mean, we've seen it with Von Miller, but I mean, Chubb could do that as well. And maybe even get some more pass production. Maybe an interception this year would be pretty fun. 2 forced fumbles last year as well. Maybe you can get a fumble recovery and turn it for a touchdown. But I think he's going to have a really good year, and he's going to emerge as a future face of the franchise. I know that he was just at the STEM school in Colorado as well, and went to go talk with the students there after the horrific school shooting that occurred there. But ever since we drafted him, he's a budding face of the franchise kind of guy, and he comes off Yeah, I'll kick it to you. What do you think about him between him and Von Miller? You know, like personalities. You know, this is thin as heck, but like when you hear them interview, what do you get the difference between the two?
Well, I mean, Von's he's having fun. Von is always, he is. He's just kind of a weirder guy. I love it.
Yeah.
But I could see that some people would be like, this guy's just kind of weird. I just know some of his interests. He'll say that he researches science and space, and he just different things that other players probably have no interest in. I mean, chickens, that's his passion. And where Bradley Chubb, he's a little bit more serious. He's a little bit more focused, a little bit more, this is business.
Oh my gosh, that's the word I'm thinking too, man. He comes in, you see it in his eye. He talks, man, this is straightforward, point A, point B. And Von is that kind of guy. You know, if you call somebody out in the locker room, I don't know. I mean, obviously you're going to listen because it's Von, but I just don't think that's his personality. If Chubb, you know, said something to me, I'd sit up straight. You know, like, oh, yes, sir. And he's got that facial hair growing as well. So he already looks like a grizzled vet.
Right.
So really excited for him this year. And I mean, hopefully I'm going to be pounding that table. You know, if he has a great year, we need to be loud about it because I feel like he didn't get the respect he deserved last year. Granted, he was a little bit of a slow starter, and then he got really hot, and then he kind of fell off, and you know that can happen with rookies. But more sustained excellence this upcoming year. Hopefully, a better defensive scheme for him can isolate him a little bit, and just growth. So I couldn't be more excited about this pick. You know, he's not Von Miller. I'm not expecting him to be Von Miller, but I think he could be a top 10 edge rusher in the NFL at some point during his rookie contract, and that's pretty much all you can ask for.
Exactly. I mean, I'll take that any day of the week. And for a top 5 pick to hit like that again, when you have Von Miller hitting with their number 2 pick now, possibly Bradley Chubb hitting with that number 5 pick, that's huge.
At a
you
position
can't miss
like
with those. Yeah, exactly. You can't miss with those picks. And it looks like the Broncos really have themselves a future star here. And that should be nothing but exciting to watch here in year 2. But moving on here, we have pick number 2 in the 2018 class, Courtland Sutton, a guy that I said was not a favorite pick of mine. I was not excited. I said he wasn't a great route runner, which kind of turned out to be true. He's better than I thought he was going to be. But this last year, he had 42 receptions, 704 yards, 16.8 average, and 4 touchdowns. And I mean, I thought about including some of the pass interference numbers because that was a part of his game of running down the field. And Joe Flacco is known for throwing it up and trying to get the penalty flag thrown. But overall, 2018, what do you think of Courtland Sutton?
I thought he had a better season than I was thinking for him. I mean, granted, you know, he's still a little bit limited right now. Right now, he's kind of a pure outside receiver going deep, and the hands got to be cleaned up for sure. And the route running, especially in the intermediate and underneath routes, need to be cleaned up. But I mean, for considering the issues at quarterback, he looked pretty darn good to me. In 42 receptions, 704 yards, 4 touchdowns, all stuff that I expect to be improved upon this year for a multitude of reasons. And the big question, I guess, for me is he going to emerge as a true number 1 wide receiver? I don't know if he has that ability, at least to be like, you know, a great number 1. You know,
right.
Somebody has to be the de facto number 1. But as like, you know, emerging as like a top 20 level wide receiver in the grand landscape of the NFL, I'm not sure. So he's going to need to improve there. But I'm excited, a quarterback that has a little bit more arm talent that can really get it to him more, you know, at any point. There was an interview he actually had where he's talking about, you know, having Flacco there, and he's like running a route that he's never, you know, he's always thought he was the decoy for that kind of route because how many quarterbacks can actually throw that ball? And the ball came to him on it, and he's like, oh my gosh, like this is different. This is a different level of stuff. So I'm excited a quarterback that can use him more in different areas of the field. That said, you know, got to be more consistent in a multitude of ways. But I don't know. He's one that, again, looks like another hit. And considering the massive, what's the word I'm looking for here? Wide receiver is a hard hit in the draft. You know, it seems like it's a high variance position as far as hit. I mean, you have guys like John Ross and Corey Davis who went in the top 10. And I don't even know if they have I would argue neither of them have showed as much as what Courtland Sutton did last year.
Right.
You know, maybe Corey Davis, more nuanced. He's more of a a complete weapon because you can play him from the slot and he can win deep or short after the catch, etc. But still, getting that value in the second round and getting that X receiver that he is, there's a lot of value there. And I think this year is going to be absolutely huge for him. I mean, we're not sure about Sanders. We're not sure. I mean, let's be honest. I'm hoping on the wide receiver core as much as anybody, but we're projecting a lot. And last year after Sanders went down, Courtland Sutton did not look so good.
It was a hit and miss rookie season, I would say. He had some very big highs. I think of
Cincinnati game.
Yep. That was a huge game for him. 85 yards, 1 touchdown.
Some
4
great
catches.
plays.
Yeah, there's just some great plays there. I think it was it the Chargers game where he made that huge catch for the first down to get him in position to win the game?
Yes. Yeah.
And so he came up with some really, really big catches. And there's a lot of times because of the limitation at quarterback, he didn't get his opportunities that he should have. And so I am interested to see what Flacco can do with this kind of wide receiver core, because I'm not sure, at least when you're talking about potential, I'm not sure Joe Flacco has had a wide receiver core quite like this. I mean, again, we have to wait till we see Sanders recovered, see this growth of Sutton and DaeSean Hamilton, those kind of things. But again, these are some weapons that I think he can really take advantage of. And I really like that the wide receivers have been talking about just how strong the arms of these quarterbacks are. They were talking the very first OTA practice, how they were dropping passes because the ball was just getting there so much faster.
Yeah.
And that, again, just makes me excited to see what they can do this year compared to last year. But no, for Courtland Sutton, I am excited. I think he's going to have a better year just catching wise. I think he's just thinking too much. You could tell when somebody's really having to count their steps, really think through everything they're doing. It just doesn't look natural. And it slowed him down as his route running, and then slowed down his ability to make the catches. And so year 2 is when you really kind of expect these guys just to be able to take that next step. And I'm thinking he's going to be a 1,000-yard receiver this year.
And is that because of volume, or is that because of talent?
Both.
Both? Okay. So you're thinking a dip in Sanders and then just more elevated for Sutton, or is it because Sutton emerges? Again,
I think it's because Sutton emerges.
Okay.
I really don't know what to expect from Sanders this year. I know everybody's talking about, he's out there running, making cuts, he's looking so good. But coming back from an Achilles, I still have my doubts of how much he's – yeah. I mean, I could see from like week 6 on him really emerging. But I think early on in the season, when they're doing those play-action passes, it's going to be Courtland Sutton run down the field and getting those big chunk plays that the Broncos really want to get out of this offense. Okay. And so that's a little bit for me. I do think, again, just being in a system that can take advantage of his skill set, him taking that next step, not having quite the drops that he's had in the years past, having a quarterback that can actually get him the football down the field to take advantage of, again, his skill set. I just think so much around him really sets him up for success, where last year there was just so much working against the entire offense. There's just too many limitations to make that work last year.
Yeah.
And so I really do. I expect this to be a guy that emerges and becomes – I think he's going to be right at 1,000. I'm not going to go crazy and say he's going to be that 1,400-yard kind of season. But I see 1,000 yards. I see he's going to have his opportunities for having like one-on-one opportunities. I see Fant taking a lot of coverage. Again, if Sanders comes back strong, he's going to get a lot of attention. So and the run game. I mean, you think about last year, that was the strength of the team. You just said it.
Game.
Right, exactly. And so I just think he really stands a good chance to take advantage of a lot of things that they're going to try to do this year. And from what I understand, just talking to people in the know, they said he's looking so much better this year. Route running's a lot more crisp, hands looking really good, all those kind of things.
He's just such a unique player to me because his tape doesn't, and his usage, if you told me where he's making his catches and how he's winning, does not match with his mock draftable athletic profile at all. You see him and he's got, winning down the field jump ball situations, but his vertical jump is in the 50th percentile, 35.5, which is, for his size, that's solid, but it's not like, you're jumping out of your seat. And then he ran a 4.5, 4.40. Noah Fant is, according to the combine, again, that's not the end all be all, is a better athlete than Courtland Sutton. But then you get to his 3-cone and his agilities with his size. He's a 96th percentile 3-cone player. And we're talking about a 6'3.5", 220-pound wide receiver. So that change of direction ability with his size is just crazy unique. And yet you see him struggling some with the separation underneath in that ability. So it makes me think there's potential there, but it's something that he needs to really do to get that next step. Because, with his change of direction ability, if he can develop into a more nuanced route runner in the intermediate part of the field, the slant, the out, those kind of things should be money for him with his size. Granted, he's going to have to catch it too, but he could really develop into something. But how much he's never going to be a true take the top off. He can threaten outside and deep because of the size and the jump ball ability and the physical presence, but it's not a true oh my gosh, if we don't jam him at the line, then he's going to get behind us in 2 seconds and it's over.
Right.
So biggest thing for you going into next year, what he needs to improve on and what you're expecting from him.
Well, it really is adding to his route running.
Yeah.
If he can do that and make a team have to really fear more than just the go route and the comeback, that was kind of the main ways how they used him. Sometimes some deep crossers, and those worked. But again, those quick slants, if you can get that guy running those and making a team have to worry about keeping that inside leverage and him being able to get that outside leverage then to beat him to the outside, it just opens up so many other things. And so for me, if he can really improve on that, which I've heard he has improved, I don't know how much until I get my actual eyes on him. I haven't seen too much. But if he can add about 3 or 4 more routes this year, it just makes him that much more dangerous. And again, when you increase the talent around him, adding a Noah Fant, other guys being in year 2, hopefully a better offensive line, better quarterback, all those things add up to this guy having a real good chance to emerge in the NFL. Now, again, I don't ever expect him to be a top 10 receiver, if I'm being honest. But again, it comes down to the talent around him. Year 2, there's just so many things that are adding up to this guy having a big year. Again, I still need to get my eyes on him just to see improved route running, see what he's doing there. But he adds just a little bit to his game. And again, as a raw player, he still had 704 yards, even with not starting at the beginning of the year. So that's pretty impressive, really, when you think about it. And so you add in a few more things, and, man, this guy could really explode on the scene. I do expect, again, touchdowns to be up because I do think we're going to be in the red zone a little bit more, and I think they're going to actually try to use him a little bit more in that area.
They need to.
Yes, they absolutely need to. I do want to see him work on a little bit of his work around the sidelines with dragging his feet. Last year, there was a couple touchdowns taken away because he didn't quite get that second foot down in time. And again, I think that just comes with more time. He'll get used to doing that a little bit more. It just going from college where you only have to get 1 foot down to NFL, that's a pretty big change, really, when you think about it for a wide receiver. And I'm excited to watch this guy year 2, but I don't expect him to be a top 10 receiver, but to be enough to make this offense look much better than it has in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot disagree with you in any way. And I'm excited to see what he can do this year because, let's be honest, the game is changing a little bit. It's becoming more of a spacing game, and you need weapons on the outside to contend. We see this is more true in college football, but you look at like a program like Iowa and Wisconsin, they're producing great offensive lines and solid run games and et cetera, but the weapons on the outside is the big difference maker. How many offensive linemen has Clemson sent to the NFL recently? But the weapons, whew. So Courtland Sutton's got to step up, and he's got to show that he can be a solid X receiver. I'm not even asking him to be a true number 1, but if he can be a solid X receiver, the offense can evolve and change. So we'll see. But we're going to take a quick break. We're going to continue talking about the 2018 class, but we'll be right back.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we're back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I'm Nick Kendell along with Carl Dumler, and we are discussing the 2018 rookie class and their expectations heading into year 2 of their NFL careers, and we're just hitting them down the row. We've already hit first round pick Bradley Chubb, second round pick Courtland Sutton. Now we are on to Royce Freeman, who last year, 130 attempts, 521 yards, 4 yards per rush, 5 touchdowns, and as well as 14 receptions for 72 yards. So overall, I would say an okay year. And Carl, I think you'll agree with me here. This was probably our least liked pick in last year's class. Not that we hated it. I mean, this isn't DeMarcus Walker, turning the TV off upset, at least for me. I didn't actually turn it off, but I was pretty upset when that pick.
Yeah, I remember that. But you and Eric were messaging me during that one, and oh my goodness. I thought you guys were going to spit fire through the computer.
We were upset. So far justified. But that's why trait-based scouting is more important than statistical scouting, folks. Anyway, Royce Freeman, solid year last year, is actually one of the more productive running backs when facing an 8-man box when he was healthy. However, he got dinged, had that ankle injury, and was just never quite the same after that. But from listening to, not only what many of the media are saying, but some inside people with better knowledge than I do on the situation have said Royce Freeman could be in line for more carries and touches this season than people are expecting.
It's very possible. I mean, you look at Phillip Lindsay. We, again, don't know exactly how. I mean, I expect him to be ready for the season health-wise, but there's probably going to be some limitations, again, early on, just getting him back into the swing of things when he hasn't been practicing quite as much, hasn't been able to lift as much with his hand and everything else. And so Royce Freeman could actually even start the season. It wouldn't surprise me, just because he has that bigger body that can handle a little bit more of a load, and have Phillip Lindsay be more of that slasher that comes in for the big play, more of that third down, possibly, receiving option that we keep hoping that we're going to see out of Phillip Lindsay. But I mean, you look at Royce Freeman actually won the starting job last year. He was the starter for the first 7 games of the season. Now, that didn't mean that he went out there and got a ton of carries, because he had a game where he was a starter and only had 5 carries against the Jets, given the Jets kind of blew us away there early in that game. I don't want to talk about that one.
Thanks, Roby.
Oh, my goodness. But anyway, again, this is a guy that I think can be that heavy load kind of guy, because he did it in college and was showing pretty well before he got hurt. I mean, really, I was pleasantly surprised at the beginning of the season how good he looked at making people miss.
Yeah, more nuance with the ball in his hand than I remembered him being at Oregon at the end. I thought his sophomore year was the best one, and then he kind of looked to wear down a little bit. And, this is something we're going to talk about with both guys, but the scheme change is something that's going to affect them. Positive, negative remains to be seen. But last year, that power blocking scheme, with the amount of yardage that the running backs created, especially yards before contact, the run blocking line last year was top 10 in the NFL. I have no qualm saying that. Maybe bottom 10 in pass blocking. But still, they created opportunities, and the zone is going to ask him, for a different style of running. Granted, we saw him do it at Oregon, but I'm not sure if it's the best fit. I guess that remains to be seen. But
I worry more about that with Phillip Lindsay, honestly.
Yeah, the outside stretch with Freeman, I wonder if he has the actual speed to get there.
I understand that. I guess with Lindsay, there was so much last year where he just hit the hole so fast.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it wasn't that our blockers were in position, but it's just he hit the hole faster than anybody ever expected, and just nobody could catch him. Mm-hmm. Where the zone, it is a lot more about patience. You kind of wait, and go. You cut and go. And that's why Terrell Davis wasn't the fastest guy in the world, but he had some of the best vision and ability just to commit. I know exactly what I'm going to cut. I know exactly when I'm going to go. And he and that offensive line were just so in sync in what they were trying to do. And I know I just said in sync. And but no, I that's why I could actually see Freeman maybe fitting a little bit better. I don't think he has that first cut of speed that you're hoping for, but I think he could have better patience and understanding of when a hole is going to open up.
Yeah, and we've seen him there at Oregon with his own scheme. I do hope that he loses a little bit of, he's not the heavy guy that we saw his last 2 seasons at Oregon, maybe to keep him a little more fresh. But I think, I think he's a solid buy low in fantasy this year too, because I think he's going to get some opportunities. And to the point about the offensive line and the blocking scheme, we did see it work for 2 different types of running backs in Pittsburgh a couple seasons ago, where we saw obviously Le'Veon Bell, a little bit more of the stop and start guy who's going to sit behind the line of scrimmage and wait for that hole, almost patient to a fault sometimes, because that can lead to some tackle for losses. But then you saw D'Angelo Williams, who was much more of that cutter, so to speak. So I think I do trust Munchak to make it work in that regard. But it's something to note, how much better is it going to be? 2 things, obviously, I always like to harp on these. Running backs aren't just asked to run the football. They got to be blockers. They got to be receivers. So hopefully we can see a little bit more of that next year as well. 14 receptions, 72 yards is, when he got the ball, it was fine. But we've seen the Shanahan offense where, especially in Atlanta, how much those running backs matter as far as receptions. Their ability in the pass game is important. So that's something we're going to need to see more of with him, just expanding his game. Obviously, we'll see how much, but that's something that I'm really looking forward to watching this year because, again, running the football for a running back is only a third of the job.
So how many carries do you see him getting this year?
Oh, man, I would probably say about 185.
Okay.
I honestly think there's a chance that he's going to outcarry Phillip Lindsay. In a perfect world, I think he does outcarry Phillip Lindsay. Just the talk of it makes it sound like the Broncos are wanting to not kill Lindsay in that regard and make him more efficient in that regard. So 190 attempts last year. In a perfect world, we probably see Lindsay about 160 for Lindsay's carries, and we see Freeman's carries go up about by 60.
Yeah, and that was last year. So many people kept saying, why are you putting Freeman back in? Why don't you just hand the ball off to Lindsay 20 times a game?
Not Madden.
Yeah, you can't turn off injuries. And, Lindsay, he's a great runner. And he's a huge weapon, but you got to use him sparingly at times. You just got to have that one guy that can be that grinder, that 4-minute offense kind of guy that just runs down a defense and then sets up a guy like Phillip Lindsay to hit that hole and hit it hard. And again, Phillip Lindsay just can't be that guy that has 20 carries a game. You look at Jamal Charles is probably one of the few small backs that could really handle a decent workload, but even there, he had a lot of injury-riddled seasons.
Yeah.
And so I think the Broncos would be very, very smart to limit Phillip Lindsay to that maybe 160 attempts, but increase his receptions opportunities.
That's the big thing for me. And he was practicing today, running around there. I'm not sure if his hand was in a cast. OTA's day 4. But his ability, obviously, there's always going to be some limitations in his pass blocking because of his size. If he's getting a 270-pound edge rusher free run at him, Lindsay's, he's a dog. He's going to square up and try to fight him. But I don't know if that's a matchup that you want to see with him. But as far as taking his game to the next level, it really has to be the receiving, right? It's just sometimes he didn't look as – he's not a natural route runner. It's just not there yet, and I'm not sure if that's something we're going to see this year because of the hand injury. How much is that going to affect his ability to work at that area and grow there? But if he can work in his ability and bring that explosiveness that he has as far as getting open, and then once the ball's in his hands, making plays after that, instead of the run game and the pass game, that takes his game and his effectiveness to an entirely different level. He just didn't look like that same guy last year. 241 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. That's solid, but I feel like given his profile, that's something that we should be pushing for even more, and that would take his game and the offense to another level. Right.
You were just talking about spacing with Courtland Sutton. You think about Courtland Sutton running the deep route, Noah Fant challenging the seam, DaeSean Hamilton challenging over the middle of the field, Manuel Sanders kind of being that anywhere you want him to go kind of guy, and then you have Phillip Lindsay on the field. They have to – can you imagine have to cover that entire field that way with every one of them? Do what?
Better get to the quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. But, having a guy like Phillip Lindsay as your outlet where you can get to him quick if the pass rush is trying to get there, that wears out a pass rush real quick when – you can just dump it off to the running back and have them go pick up the first down on some big plays down the field. But again, it just that's I'm with you. You got to get the ball into this guy's hands, but you can do that in different ways other than just having to hand it off to him. Let Royce Freeman be your bulldozer, your attempts guy on the field, and keep it that 4.0 average. A little bit higher would be really nice. But again, 4.0, that's not too bad, really.
No,
it's average.
Yeah.
And let him be that grinder. And then, boom, when that defense starts wearing out, you put Phillip Lindsay on the field, and they're just going to be like, oh, crap.
So that's the big thing for me. I would love to just see him get a little bit better in the pass game, but we'll see. But moving on now, I talked about Lindsay, Freeman. We're going to get a little long. We're going to move it on to the conditional or compensatory pick that the Broncos received, and they selected Isaac Yiadom, who had an up-and-down season last year. Things started off really rough in that Vikings preseason game where I think it was Diggs and Kirk Cousins that absolutely eviscerated him. But I think he looked a little bit better down the stretch last year. Obviously, you're filling in for Chris Harris Jr. There's going to be a drop-off there. But I think people are somewhat sleeping on Yiadom right now.
Yeah, he's that one guy that has a little bit of size and can be a more of a matchup cornerback this year with the guys that they've brought onto this team. Yeah. But I really do expect for Kareem Jackson to play more safety than corner. And part of that is I would expect Yiadom to be a little bit higher than that of like a Will Parks for the Broncos. And I know Will Parks has his fans, and he should. He had some good plays last year. But I think Yiadom has a little bit more upside on what he can bring on the field. And again, just that he's a better matchup player. When you get a tall wide receiver, you need a guy like Yiadom to kind of come in there instead of those 5'10" cornerbacks that quarterbacks would just love to throw it up against and see what they can do. And so I do. I expect him to actually get pretty decent snaps this season.
Yeah, right now he's the de facto cornerback 3, right? Or 3.5 if you're including Kareem Jackson being the versatile cornerback / safety. But I expect a bigger year for them. I guess my big question is, what do you think about the scheme change for him?
It makes me a little nervous. Yeah, I thought he was very good more as a press man kind of cornerback. He's not a big interception guy. I've said before he has terrible hands. And so I don't know how he's going to be. That's my big question with him. How does he adjust to being a little bit more zone coverage, being off ball, those kind of things, and having to run downhill and try to make plays? I don't know. I guess this is the first time it's not my first time, but it's my first time really talking about it, I guess. It does make me a little nervous. But I've always loved Yiadom. I think he's a very, very good player, and I think he could really, really adjust well to this defense. Are you same boat, or are you thinking different?
I do worry about the scheme fit for him. That's something that, again, drafted to play press man, and he just did not look as comfortable when he wasn't afforded the opportunity to be physical at the line of scrimmage. I don't know if he has the fluidity or the hips to play the off coverage. Granted, we'll see some cover too, so he'll have a chance to play a little bit closer still, and maybe that length and that physicality will help there. But I do have some worries there, so we'll see. But he'd be a huge one if he could take a big step forward this year, because it does sound like this is going to be Chris Harris Jr.'s last season in Denver. I'm assuming they get a contract done for this season. So yeah, we'll see. It'll be big for him. And he's the only real one that I see out there that has legitimate size. So they really do need him to step up. But speaking about guys who need to step up, first fourth round pick for them, Josey, Jewell. Last season, up and down, he was solid, filling in for Brandon Marshall, and he's, many people thought they would replace him or Todd Davis. Linebacker for Fangio has been one where he wants guys who can play sideline to sideline, have coverage ability, speed to boot. That's something that's important, and neither Todd Davis or Josey Jewell really embody that. But I do think that Josey Jewell is in line for a solid year. I've been kind of lower on him, maybe a little bit to combat my own homerism because I'm obviously a big Hawkeye fan, but solid season last year. 3 pass deflected, 58 tackles, 4 tackles for loss. And I think year 2 for him is going to be a solid one. I think, you're never going to want him to be the best starting linebacker on your team. But in a 3-4, especially one that's more zone heavy, if you compare him with a a better all-around linebacker, whether it be that speed or coverage or maybe even a guy who's a better blitzer. That's something that I think you can do with. But I'm excited to see what Josey Jewell can do this year. And listening to Fangio and the defensive guys talk, I think that Jewell is taking that step forward as far as leadership, and I think he has a chance to be a solid player this year if he's utilized correctly, which, I mean, I trust Fangio to utilize him correctly.
Who do you think has the mic between him and Todd Davis this year?
I would say you'd give it to Davis still.
That's what I think too.
Yeah.
I had somebody ask me that earlier this week, and I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it'd be Todd Davis because he's done it before, and he's very well liked by teammates, very well respected. And not that Josey Jewell couldn't do it, just makes sense to keep it with the veteran.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was, you and I talked about it. Some of the biggest winners after the draft were Josey Jewell and Todd Davis. And so for them to, I guess, get that vote of confidence, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just things didn't fall the way the Broncos wanted. But even there was times where players we knew the Broncos liked at the off-ball linebacker position, they still passed on them. And so I think they do trust these guys to do pretty decent in this system. I think they're going to have to make some adjustments because you go from Roquan Smith and Danny T, our old Danny T in Chicago, to these two guys. It's a whole new ball field.
Yeah.
And what they can do and their limitations on the field. And so I do expect a little bit more zone coverage compared to what maybe we saw with Chicago last year, just in big part because of the linebackers, not so much because of the cornerbacks. But in there, I think they can thrive pretty well. I think Josey Jewell showed there at Iowa that he can do very well dropping into a zone and being smart enough to understand when a player's coming into his zone, what they're trying to do to him, all those kind of things. And again, year two, I expect him just to look better than he did last year. Players keep talking about there was such disconnect between the coaches and the players and even the players at different positions. That is going to be huge for this defense just to look so much better when there's not going to be as much disconnect. The secondary, the linebackers, the defensive line, all on the same page. That makes a huge difference when you're talking about what they can do on the field.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. And, keep the ball rolling here. DaeSean Hamilton, last season, 30 receptions, 243 yards, 8.1 yards per catch, and 2 touchdowns. But I would say that the tape was much better than what the statistical output was because that dude looked open to me a lot.
He did. His ability to work and win underneath. You were talking a little bit earlier of sometimes with Courtland Sutton of his ability to get off some coverage and win in the short area was not that great. DaeSean Hamilton's the complete opposite. He's not going to win a whole lot going down the field, but his ability to win in 5 yards or less, it's outstanding. He's not the most athletic guy, but honestly, if we're looking at comparisons, I'm looking at some of those interior guys for the Patriots and what they could do to get open. He has some of that same nuance in his footwork, and he's a guy that looks like a veteran the minute he stepped on the field. Now, the biggest issue that I have with his upcoming season is not so much about him, but it's just the players around him. Mm-hmm. There's only one football to go around.
Yeah.
And so you have Noah Fant added to this roster. You got a running game that they're going to really work to take advantage of. Courtland Sutton in the X position. Again, Manuel Sanders, we don't know what he's going to be this year. If Sanders is not ready to go, Hamilton's going to be the biggest benefactor of that, hands down. If Sanders, say, misses the first 5-6 games of the year, I could see Hamilton having a 600, 700-yard season. If Sanders is ready to go day one, I have a hard time seeing him get over 500 yards.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. However, I do think that they are going to start to phase out Sanders, and Hamilton is the guy who's going to be the one who probably receives a lion's share of the targets. But, Sanders, Sutton, Hamilton, that's something that Broncos are going to really need to step up this year. So we'll see. Obviously a better quarterback, hopefully better passing scheme. But again, a lot of projection there, so we'll see. All right, we got a couple more guys to talk about here, but we'll be right back to finish up the year two expectations for the 2018 class.
Huddle Up podcast listeners, check this out. If you've been thinking about becoming a Mile High Huddle VIP subscriber, now's the time to do it. We have a phenomenal offer to get your foot in the door as a new VIP. Right now, you can get your first month of VIP for $1. That's insane value, and it immediately gives you access to all of the premium content we produce. If you want to subscribe for the year, new annual subscribers will get 30% off the cost of a membership. Never before have we been able to offer new subscribers this kind of introductory incentive to pull the trigger. This is how you get access to our VIP mailbags every Friday. Zach and I answer each and every question from our VIPs, even if it means an episode goes a little bit long. Jumping on this offer also gives you 100% access to every piece of content we produce on the front page, including our Broncos film room breakdowns and every other form of deep dive Broncos content our site is known for. VIPs also get entry into our members-only MHH Insiders Forum, where you hear the insider buzz first from our talented and plugged-in staff, and you get to engage with other passionate and knowledgeable fans just like you. Becoming a VIP subscriber, you guys, it's the best way to support the work and the time Zach and I put into producing a daily podcast for your listening pleasure and edification. So go to milehighhuddle.com, click on the green banner, choose monthly or annual, and you are locked in. The regular season will be here before you know it, so jump on one of these offers, Broncos country.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we're back on the Building the Broncos podcast with Carl Dumler. I'm Nick Kendell, and we have two guys left that we really want to touch on here as far as the Broncos 2018 class, and really, not the biggest producer. There's a chance that neither of these guys even make the team, to be honest. But Troy Fumagalli missed last year entirely with a sports hernia, and also Keyshawn Bierria, who I believe he was on the practice squad most of last year. Honestly, now that was when we're talking about a 6th-round pick. I'm not going to get too upset about it, but that was a guy that I wasn't as high on with his skill set, and I don't think he's one that's definitely got more of a long shot to make the roster. But I think Fumagalli as well, with Noah Fant being drafted, and you re-signed Hireman, and you have Jake Butt there, who's all those guys are practicing right now, looking healthy. Maybe Troy Fumagalli, they only keep 3 tight ends. Maybe he's on the outside looking in. Do you think either of these guys are making the roster?
I do think Troy Fumagalli makes it. I think they'll keep 4 tight ends just in part because of injuries to the other guys. I mean, You look at Hireman, you look at Jake Butt. Yeah, sorry, I was spacing there for a second. Why could I miss on the Butt? Mm-hmm. And those 2 guys coming back from injury, can you really trust them to stay healthy? And so keeping 4 tight ends seems to make a little bit more sense. It always seems like some tight end goes down at some point during a season. And Fumagalli's at least good enough all-around game to be okay with keeping on the roster. And I could see him being somewhat of a special teams guy for him and being okay there. He's decent at everything, great at nothing kind of guy. He doesn't have the speed to really burn you down the field. He has decent route running, but it's not perfect by any means. He's a pretty good blocker, but not great. I mean, again, the list could go on of all the different traits that you want in a tight end, and he's kind of that perfect fit for being that tight end number 4, that if you absolutely need a guy to come in because of injuries, at least he can still come in and produce at least a little bit. It won't be as dramatic of a drop-off as some years past where starting tight ends went down, and you're talking about guys that wouldn't even make practice squads of some other teams.
Yeah, I'm with you. We'll see. I'm not as big of a fan of his blocking ability as you are. I mean, he's kind of there's a reason he fell to the 5th, but he's kind of he doesn't have the blocking that you want for an inline guy, but also I don't think he's the quite twitchy enough athlete that you want for a more flex tight end. So I don't know. We'll see. But again, coming off a year with sports hernia, he's going to get a chance to make the roster. It might come down to roster math in the end, but given the injury history of the 2 guys ahead of him, 2 of the 3 guys ahead of him, might be smart to keep him. As far as Keyshawn Bierria goes, I mean, I'm willing to go into preseason and everything with an open mind, but probably a guy that either practice squad or looking for another gig. So we'll see. But overall, how would you say, we're a year removed, how would you say this 2018 class looks, 13 months out?
Fantastic, if I'm using a word. Just because, I mean, you look at number of starters for this upcoming season. You got Bradley Chubb for sure, Courtland Sutton for sure. you could call Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay kind of 1A, 1B starters, since they're both going to get their opportunities on the field. Josey Jewell's going to get a start. DaeSean Hamilton, depending on Emmanuel Sanders, but he's still going to get a lot of snaps. Yadam's going to get a lot of snaps this year. And so when you're talking about guys that not only produced last year, but they're going to get a lot of playing time this year, and the fact that you got a coaching change, and yet I still expect these guys to be big parts of this team. And so that's always a big thing when a lot of times you have that coaching change, and a lot of those past draft picks are going, oh my gosh, yeah, they don't fit this at all. Most of these guys still fit what you want out of them. I think that they can make it work on the field and be high productive players. And so I really can't fault the Broncos for anything that they did in this draft, other than maybe some of the late round picks were not used as well as I would like. But if that's your argument, is the late round picks weren't quite guys that you would like, that's usually a pretty good draft.
Yeah, the only one that I'm not super huge on is Royce Freeman for where they took him. I had my heart set on Fred Warner, who ended up going one pick before to the 49ers. Man, he'd have been a heck of a pick looking back now, but oh well, what can you do? You can only pick the guys that are available to you. So overall, I think it looks like a pretty good class and has a chance to be a foundational piece for this roster and maybe even a franchise turnaround. I mean, it's not just the on-field ability, but listening to these guys talk, it's a group of people who are in and men and leaders. So I think that's a big thing. And hopefully, if half of these guys take a step forward this year, the Broncos are on a very good path.
Right. Well, then you add in possibly quarterback of the future that could be building with these weapons. That could be very, very exciting, where the Broncos have a nice 2-year window with nice weapons surrounding quarterback on a rookie contract that you can add more players around them. It sets up well for the Broncos if, again, like you said, the players can take the next step and say Drew Lock actually works out.
That's the big thing. Remains to be seen. But if Lock works out, then everything else around him is complimentary. But that's how important the quarterback is. So we'll see. But anyway, got to wrap this up because we got to record another one here for you. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports Digital, to find more content covering the Denver Broncos. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our weekly Denver Bronco deep dives. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.